It is 4:30 on April 22nd. Begin our workshop agenda with roll call attendance. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts, Councilman Taylor, Councilman Overton,
Here.
Councilman Whitlock, Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
All are present except for our mayor. We'll now move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Council President,
Councilmember Strader.
I move that we adopt the agenda as published.
Second.
Been seconded. All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All ayes, and the agenda has been adopted. Next up is our consent agenda.
Council President Cavanagh,
Yes, Councilmember Strader.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for the City Council President to sign and clerk to attest.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All ayes, and the motion passes. All right, and there were no items moved from our consent agenda, so we will begin with Department and Commission reports. Turn it over to Crystal for CDBG Community Development Week and sticker competition presentation. Crystal?
Thank you. So as you said, I'm here for National Community Development Week. Let me get this open really quick. So the purpose of Community Development Week is to make sure that we're highlighting how these federal dollars are impacting our community. We're also wanting to make sure that people are aware of what's happening with them so that we can protect any future funding that may be coming our way. And we also want to empower our community by giving them a voice for what happens next. The total funding that we had for last year, and I'll refer to it as the program year, which ran from October 2023 to September 2024, the total that we spent was $560,498. And it's broken down here by percentage of what we put towards our goals. So roughly 4% for administrative costs, about 9% for services, and then housing was right around 39%, and infrastructure was about 48%. I wanted to go through and give you a breakdown of what those individual projects look like. And for the services, we also got a couple of success stories. And this is also some pictures that came actually from the Boys and Girls Club. The other pictures are not from the actual places though. So the Boys and Girls Club spent $20,000 last year, and they provided 61 youth access to summer, before school, and after school care. And one of the success stories that they shared with us is that they had built a trusting enough relationship that a child who was being neglected and abused was able to come to them, and they were able to help them get out of that situation. So that's really what their program is about, just helping kids have the supports that they need in place. For the Jesse Tree, we provided them with $32,354, and they provided short-term rental assistance to help 57 people stay housed during the time of crisis. It is emergency rental assistance, so they pretty much always have an eviction notice before they can even access these funds. So one of their success stories was a mom of two. She was recently separated, and she didn't have any additional funding coming in, so she was trying to work through all of the child support things that you have to go through during something like that. And she got an eviction notice, and they were able to give her the short-term help that she needed so that she could get to her long-term plan and was more sustainable. For NeighborWorks Boise, they worked through our goal of housing. They had a total of $220,370 that they spent, and that was for two different programs. One was for the end of their home buyer assistance program. That was one that carried over from previous years. Just with the affordable housing issues that we have, then it was hard for them to find a home that qualified. So it was a carryover, and they were able to spend that on one home. And they also provided repairs to 9 homes to help people stay in their homes and stay safely and stably housed. For public improvements, we spent a total of $576,000. With that, we installed and upgraded 83 streetlights along walking routes to schools. And we also finalized the designs for the city's top 2 walkability projects, and that's the CDBG walkability projects. And the final goal was administering the program and doing fair housing activities. We spent $21,198 there. We've partnered with Caldwell, Nampa, and Boise quite a bit to educate the community on fair housing issues. We also coordinated efforts with property manager advocates and tenant advocates to develop a tenant rights campaign. And we also just did the normal managing the program to ensure compliance and monitoring of the projects. The projects that we're funding in the current year are Boys and Girls Club Scholarships Program, Jesse Tree Emergency Rental Assistance, and then NeighborWorks Boise's Homeowner Repair Program, and we're also funding walkability projects. We're asking everybody to stay involved. We do have our next action plan coming out soon, and it will be open for public comment during the month of June. We'll be doing multiple public hearings and public outreach events, so people can contact me if they want any additional information. But speaking of community outreach events, we have a sticker design contest with the theme of Home Feels Like Belonging that finished earlier this month. We invited all community members of any age to participate, and the winning designs are going to be shared with the community throughout the year. And the stickers will be available starting next week. And we have 2 winning artists that we wanted to recognize tonight. The first one is Naho Nakashima, and this is the design that she shared. And her daughter Leela is here to take a picture with council. She wasn't able to make it today. And then we also have JC McKenna here, and this one is her sticker. So that is it for me. We'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Crystal. Council, any questions? Crystal, maybe one just real quick about CDBG, as there continues to be a lot of national conversations about budgets. Are you hearing from national offices about threats, reductions? What has the communication been with your national counterparts? Just give us a flavor for how that communication has been ongoing or is challenged.
Our HUD offices, the reps that we have, they have been reduced by about half. They're doing some pretty big cuts to HUD. For this year, the funding is staying level, but they have not said how they're going to allocate it. So I'm not sure if we're going to get the same amount or if they're going to use a different way of doing that. We should hear by May 15th how much we'll be getting this next year. But then after that, I'm unsure what's going to happen.
I know you will. When you find that information out, if you could forward that on to council, we'd sure appreciate it.
Will do.
Right. Council, any other questions? Not. You ready for pictures? Want to do? Great. Council, you want to join me down the podium with our artists? All those angles. All right. Good. Photographers? All right. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thanks, guys. There you go. Yes, and I think it's important. You do not have to stay. You are welcome to go. You're welcome to stay, but if you would like to leave, that's okay too. Great. Thank you, Crystal, for doing that, for helping to coordinate that. That was a nice piece of community outreach. Well done. Moving on then is going to be item number 12 from our legal department, discussion of the Farmstone Crossing Development Agreement. Mr. Neri, we'll turn it over to you.
Mr. President, members of the council, don't think this is a lengthy discussion. I did send you a memo. Basically, most of you remember we had the Farmstone Crossing that had the Agri silo. Great discussion about that. Great desire to preserve that. We worked with the HPC and the developer to preserve that silo. And originally the intention when we created the development agreement was to eventually move it temporarily to the city property and eventually back to either a different site, at the site where the Farmstone Crossing would be developed on a different location, or some other type of outcome. In the interim, after we signed the agreement to take the ownership of the property, they did work it out with a corresponding developer, with Victory Greens, to be able to put it on their site. And so we worked with them, worked with APC, worked with the mayor's office, and we got that coordinated. And so we created a separate document that then terminated that agreement. So that way we didn't own it at all, and they could then transfer it. It has been transferred. It is over at Victory Greens. Their intention is to then put it at Victory Gardens. And the last they told me about a couple weeks ago, they were in the process this spring of getting it, all the footings done and all the placement for it so they could actually move it and restore it and put it back, and they actually intend to use it in the future. So what's left now, I've discussed with planning, is we have a development agreement that is incomplete and has not been signed yet, and that's the developer simply asking, how do you want us to proceed? Because there's, I can't remember, Bill, 3 or 4 provisions, a few provisions in the agreement that need to be changed. And because they only relate to the city and the developer and no one else. So really, in discussing with planning, really, we just wanted some clarity from the council. What would you like us to see? Do you want us to go through your typical modification of the development agreement process when it only really is relevant to us? We can do an amendment and amend the development agreement, again, bring it forward with that. So I want to make sure the record's clear, and that's kind of what the whole purpose of today was. Bill, I don't know if Bill Parsons has anything from planning and kind of his thoughts, but he and I had discussed this, and I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page with the council on how we wanted to move forward.
Council, questions, comments? Mr. Parsons, I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Mr. President, members of the council, no, I appreciate Bill bringing me in the loop on this, because it is a unique circumstance where we had a historic structure that they usually get torn down, and we aren't so fortunate to have it relocated onto a different property. I think ultimately the council really wanted to see that stay on the property, but understanding the challenges with that, I think there's a good compromise here. So just to touch on a few points that Bill was trying to share with you, typically when we modify a DA, we'll go through a public hearing process. And that's where we felt this was a little outside of the box, because again, the silo had nothing to do with what we typically see in a normal development agreement. It really was the city trying to find the best solution with the Historic Preservation Commission to find a home for that rather than destroying it. So I feel very confident in my discussions with both Bill and Emily in the legal department that I think this is the right decision for the city, is to have staff go back and look at that staff report, update, make some tweaks to those provisions, and then bring that back just for you on a subsequent agenda, just to have it finalized with the developer and you, and then finally get this property annexed and development underway on that part of the city. That's really all I had to add. I'd stand for any questions you have.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
I'm pretty confident in both what legal and planning have said as a path forward, and be willing to, I think that's transparent enough. I think it's the right thing to do. And I'd certainly be willing to back that coming back forward in front of us to modify and make happen.
Hey, I think
Yeah,
we're all
council
in-
will make those changes, and then we'll have the developer review it, and they can sign off on it, and then we can bring it forward, just a normal development agreement.
Great. Sounds excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Neri.
Thank you.
All right, and now we're gonna move on to item 13. I don't think you're going anywhere, so we'll turn this over to council real quick. And I'm sure Mr. Neri will touch on this, that a number of years ago, we established a trust. That trust has never been before council, since it's been formed, and so in speaking with the mayor, we thought it was important. In light of some of the mayor's comments at the all-employee meeting about the cost related to benefits, good for us to learn a little bit more about the trust, how it functions, impact on our budget. So I appreciate Mr. Neri and any of our amazing HR team members being here today. And Mr. Neri, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. So I'm here on behalf of the City of Meridian Employee Benefits Trust. I'm the chair of the trust committee. The trust is here, or some of the members of the trust committee are here, but I can get this started. And Chris, you tell people every week, and this does not look like what I normally see. So do I just simply move by the arrows here or the arrows on the board? Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
That looks great.
It's different when you're sitting over there. All right. So as Council President Cavanagh said, we formed this trust through a number of years of discussion and effort of both the city staff, the HR staff, and with our partners at Gallagher and our prior partners at Mercer in deciding this is the proper pathway for the city to move forward with our benefits and for both our medical, dental, and vision benefits for the city and its employees. We felt this was a good path forward to do this. We got this up and going just prior to 2020. Nothing were to happen in 2020, this would have been perfect, but we did have a few things that hiccuped along the way, but we're here to kind of catch up on where we are today. So as we said, this is, again, it's a trust, so it has actually a separate entity from the city. The trust is managed by a board. Again, the board is made up currently of myself, Alex Freitag from Public Works, Christina Barney from Human Resources, Eli Daniel from IT, and Justin Northway from Police. We work in conjunction with our partners with Gallagher as the city's benefits brokers. So we work with them on how the trust is managed, how the benefits are decided, how we coordinate with Blue Cross as our benefits provider, and how we work through all of the various programs that are necessary to operate this trust. We have some of the folks here in the audience, so if you have some specific questions, either whether it's for Gallagher or for the trustees or for Human Resources, or Reba White is here as well from Human Resources to help with that. If you have any specific ones that I can't answer, we can certainly have somebody else. But anyway, our trust meetings, again, it's run like any other public entity. We have public meetings. They're noticed monthly. We meet monthly. Our meetings predominantly are online, but they can be in person. They're held here at the city. And we work, again, we meet with our Blue Cross representatives as well as Gallagher monthly, as well as the trustees, to discuss anything related to the operation and the financial piece of the benefits plan. So again, Reba is the person we work with closely on our accounts payable, receivable, paying for the bills, helping process that, and also between her and Christina Barney in working with the Department of Insurance for compliance requirements, so that we make sure we comply with the state and whatever needs they want to make sure that the trust is solvent and is being operated in a clear and concise manner for the public's benefit. And then also, again, we work with Gallagher for our benefits, and they work closely with us on all the various questions, all the various issues, as well as helping give us a great perspective and a great view of the broader perspective, or broader spectrum of benefits out there, not just with our entity, but with other entities. But Gallagher works with a lot of other public entities and private, so they have a good cross section of the world out there on what's valuable, what's useful, what can be done, what can be of use to our employees. And they're a great partner and a great assist for us to have. So again, the trust has annual rate renewals. They're reviewed annually. We also have to have them reviewed by an actuarial annually. So that's helping us to determine what the rates would be. And they look at our experience. They look at the level of number of employees, the number of lives that are in the program, because of course it not just includes our employees, but also the dependents of all the employees. That includes their spouses as well as children. They help us try to determine and estimate what the costs are going to be on a year-by-year basis, so that we can try to get the right amount of funding appropriate for the potential risks that are out there in the world and related to the costs of both medical coverage, as well as medical procedure, as well as pharmaceuticals. All of those things have various rates and various types of issues that arise from them. And we certainly have to be as nimble as we can to be in front of those types of things and try to use that actuarial and that type of expertise to help us gauge what the cost of that program would be on a year-by-year basis. And through that, of course, the trust is audited, just like the city, obviously on a much smaller scale, but we're audited as well, making sure that we are, again, solvent and running the trust appropriately and meeting all the requirements of the Department of Insurance. And then, of course, we have quarterlies, actual reviews, audit reports. All of those are reviewed by the Department of Insurance for annual approval. Again, the people that are part of our trust are the general employees and all the police department sworn. The fire union is not a part of it, so all the fire union members are in a different trust of their own. They are managed that through their entity, and they aren't managed through the city, so we don't have any relationship with their medical benefit coverage. That's done through them and their own entity, which is not part of this. So it's a completely separate one. But as I said, it's medical, dental, vision. Those are the current coverage and the current providers that we use, Blue Cross, Delta Dental. Also, it includes Willamette Dental as well for dental and vision through VSP. Again, we are generally, it's called a self-insured trust. We are partially self-funded. Again, but there's a portion of the trust that is basically handled by the city, by part of the trust on the cost. And then above a certain amount, a certain stop loss amount then is then partly covered then by Blue Cross. So this allows us to remain really competitive. It allows us to be a little more nimble for employees. You know, we've had 2 or 3 situations since we've been in the trust has been up and running. And we've had employees come to us, whether it's based on an individual circumstance for an individual employee or an individual group of employees with a particular condition or a particular circumstance that was unique to that group. And they could then come to the trust because either the coverage wasn't quite expansive enough for what their needs were, or there had been some other issues on some of the coverage that had occurred, and they could come to our board to say, can we cover that? Can we address their particular need? And that was one of the values when we looked at trying to create this type of trust of how it could be maybe greater value to the employees, because it would feel less concerning, less, I guess, daunting for them to go before a board that is made up of other employees that understand the circumstances, both of how the cost of these things work, but also what the needs of individual employees were, rather than a large company that you would normally have to deal with an appeal if you ever have to deal with any type of insurance issue. Sometimes that can be a pretty daunting task for folks. And we thought this would be one reason why a trust of this type might be of value to the employees. And again, we've had that happen 2 or 3 times, and we've been able to work through those issues pretty well with the employee. And one of the things it says here, like on our bullet, once fully matured and funded, one of the discussion points we've had over this time period with the council over the years was, could the funding from the trust, if we could build up a reserve, be able to help fund additional benefits, whether it be a post-employment retirement program or some other types of benefits that may have value to the work group? Could we be able to fund that through some realized savings through the program? So that way, in the past, when you had any savings, those were realized by the provider like Blue Cross and not by this trust or by a separate group that could reapply it back into the trust itself. That was one of the main reasons why we decided to go this route, that was the hope, is that as we become more solvent and become more fundable and fungible over the years, it would be more valuable to be able to do that for future needs. So again, contribution rates are suggested by carrier and broker based on experience trends. That's again what the actuarial helps us with. They give us what they determine we should be charging to make sure we stay solvent. Do we need to have any additional funding or any additional need that we need to make sure we're in front of, that we can anticipate coming into marketplace? Again, there are some fixed costs, as it states, administrative fees, health insurer fees, stop loss premiums, things like that. Again, we don't have the same tax that you have to pay on some of these that you would otherwise, that we've had to deal with. In fact, one of the questions I asked recently at our trust meeting was, if the question were posed, would we have been better off or would have been cheaper if we'd have simply just stayed with what we had, instead stayed in the same type of program we'd had for years and just stayed as a funded program through Blue Cross and done it that way? And we had always believed prior to making this decision that that was not the best sustainable model for the city anyway, to just continually just accept the future increases in costs without any control or any ability to manage any of the care wouldn't be the most wisest business decision anyway. But the question I posed was, again, would it have been cheaper? And the answer I received back, and I would certainly leave the people behind me to answer it even more succinctly or more clear than I can, but the answer was no. We really wouldn't have saved any money. The money really, I mean, again, with insurance, like most other types of businesses, right, it's very cyclical. There is a lot of ups and downs. You have to understand that the down years are going to be also exchanged by up years. And so as a trust, you get to gain the benefit of both the good and the bad. You have to deal with the down years, but you also get the benefit of the up years. When you have a fully funded and you don't have any of that, you may have some consistency because you're not having experiencing any of the losses, but you're almost always going to experience the expenses because they're going to make it up. They're going to always have to recoup that return, and they aren't going to keep it from what you made, but basically what the cost of the program is. So you're not necessarily going to get anything back by doing that. So by us maintaining and keeping it internally, we have a better chance of doing that over the longer haul. So the answer to me was no, we wouldn't have really saved anything in the long run. Reality was a lot of these things cost what they cost. Again, employer maintains the risk, pays the claims out of the trust, and the reserves and the surplus are held by the trust. So we do get some level of comfort or assurance that we are the ones maintaining the funds to help pay for these claims until they reach that stop loss amount. So again, I don't want to go through everything on the slide, but if you have questions, please feel free to stop me at any point. And so we can go kind of year by year. So in 2020, again, we did end the year with a down loss. There was this worldwide pandemic. Most of you probably heard about it. That was something, again, was a little unanticipated by most of us. And there was a lot of unknown costs for everyone. So it certainly wasn't just us. And it certainly was, everyone had to experience those things. And many of the things that we dealt with in that time period, and again, I don't think we were alone in this. So whether we had been fully funded with Blue Cross or we had done our partial self-funding that we took on, there were many things that we and Blue Cross, to their credit as well, just said, we're going to just pay for this. We're just going to pay for it and we'll figure it out. Because we just need to take care of this. We need to get in front of this. We need to make sure to help people and provide whatever's needed. And we don't always know exactly what was needed in the moment. It was just, everything was very much dependent on the moment. So we tried to address those things, as did our partners. And again, Blue Cross is great to work with, and we had no issues. And Gallagher was a great help to us. And we really worked through all of this together as a group. Again, 2021, again, we ended with some losses. Again, the pandemic was still going on. There was issues on vaccines. If you recall, vaccines came out in 21. So then that was another change that happened. There was costs to that. Some of those things we had to absorb. You know, I have to remind employees periodically that employees always look at things based on what comes out of their pocket, which I understand. I've been in that boat for a long time too. They don't realize the $20 they pay is a fraction of whatever that was actually cost. And it may have already cost you $20, but it may have cost the plan $100 or $200 or whatever that may be. And oftentimes, again, sometimes the employees don't always understand that, and I get it, but there is a cost that is unknown, or at least unknown until you really get into this part of the side of the business to understand that. But with vaccines and tests and all the things that were happening, all of those things had costs to them. Again, about almost $200,000 were additional costs related to COVID. We had some very large claims. 8 of them were over 100,000. Our stop loss is 225. So once it hits 225, that then goes into a fully funded portion of the plan. So now that comes off of Blue Cross's side again, and that again has a relationship to what we pay as a premium, but it also doesn't affect our bottom dollar of what the trust has to pay. But again, we had one at that particular point in time that hit 225. We did have to come back to the city that year for some additional funding. We have to maintain a certain amount of reserve by Department of Insurance to make sure we can pay any claims that are out there. And I think it's 3 months. 3 months. So 3 months worth of contributions have to be maintained. So when we've ever had any deficit, it's generally been in those reserves. So not only be able to pay out the claims, but making sure we have that backfill, make sure there's any outstanding claims on the tail end. So the Board of Trustees, we also looked at some other options. So this telehealth, coupon maximizer, and choice stocks were different programs that we have to allow choice. And that was one of the things, again, as we developed this program and developed having a trust, we were looking for is, are there ways we can look for both ways to save money in a practical way for employees, but secondarily, a way to provide options and choice and education for people to find a better opportunity, to be more consumer oriented and thoughtful of what needs they have and ways they could address those needs that might not just save the trust money, but could save them money. and might be a better option for them as well. So again, trying to educate, trying to get them to make wiser choices, be better consumers, was something that we were looking for, trying to help our employees do a better job at and be more informed. Again, we changed from, to Gallagher then, and again, they've been a great partner for us, and we've really enjoyed working with Gallagher. And a couple of our folks from Gallagher in the audience, and again, they've been invaluable. Scott's online as well from Gallagher with us, and they have been absolutely invaluable to us. And we really appreciate their counsel and their guidance in helping us manage through this. 2022 end the year with a gain, so we were on the plus side, at least for that year. Again, COVID claims started tapering off. Again, we have some large claims. And when we talk about large claims, again, we get a list monthly that shows the number of larger claims, and basically these are claims in the multiple thousands of dollars, and these aren't itemized by individuals, but really the type of claims they are, and then the dollar values attached to them. And again, these are the most serious illnesses, serious injury types of claims. Again, we had 6 over 100,000. We didn't have any that year hit the 225,000. But these are the ones that are really sometimes the hardest to address. You know, when you're looking at trying to manage claims, you're looking at the majority of the types of claims you're going to get. And that's, again, what a lot of the work that goes into trying to determine what the cost of the program is going to be, is looking at what is generally types of claims people are going to have. But can you always be able to manage or understand how many claims you may have for serious health conditions, or, you know, cancers, and for premature babies and things like that are significantly expensive than just, you know, an injury that may happen from a car injury or an off-work injury or something like that. So those are the kind of things that can be really challenging to address from a plan standpoint. Again, 2023 ended with a gain. Again, we had 56 large claims, 5 of them were over 100,000. Again, we had none hitting the stop loss in that particular year. We added, again, Smart Shopper. This is another program, again, to provide some consumer choice for our employees and to give them options to be able to find better ways for them to get treatment for certain types of either conditions or for types of procedures. Oftentimes with some of these programs, they can get a rebate, they can get some cost savings back to them, and they can also provide them with some cost savings up front. So we try to, again, help educate folks, because there are certain types of procedures, and I always use the common examples. People get MRIs or other types of, where they're not going to their normal physician, right? They're just a referral. They have to go get an MRI for a condition of some sort. Many people don't care where they get it. They just get it wherever they either get told to get it, or whether they could find a place that's either more convenient or cheaper. And they're not really that concerned about where it is. It's not like going to your regular physician, where, again, most people don't want to do that. But if they could have an option or look for something else that might be more beneficial, location-wise, time-wise, cost-wise, this is what we've been trying to do, is helping educate them about that. Again, 2024, that was a year we ended up with a smaller loss. Again, 70 large claims and a number over 100,000, and a couple that hit the 225. Now, and I don't know this for a fact, and certainly I think the folks behind me can answer that, but one of the questions I always have is, I don't know if these were 2 brand new claims. So I don't know if some of the, because again, some of these claims are going to just keep going because they're an ongoing condition. So some of those that may have been 100,000 in one year hit that stop loss in the second year. So I think some of these may be that, but I don't know that for certain. But so again, as you can imagine, some fall off, some keep increasing. So some of those are going to hit that. So they aren't necessarily brand new claims. Again,
Council President Kepler?
Sure. Yes.
Just maybe while we're on the slide. So I was trying to get my head around this. Is the correct way to look at this, if we take all the losses and all the gains, it looks like we're in the green by $437,000 on a net basis. So if I net those out, right, I take the losses, I take the gains, sort them all out. I mean, so we're certainly, on an absolute basis, it looks like we're coming out ahead. I mean, we've had to fund our plan more though, too. But at the same time, our insurance premiums have likely not increased as much as they would have if we were on more of a market-driven plan, like if we weren't self-funded, right? Have we figured out on like an absolute basis if we have achieved a decrease in our premiums compared to where we would be? I was just kind of curious, like how that math works.
Well, and that I don't know, but. Oh, are we gonna get to that? think there
I
was a
looked
slide
at
on it.
the increases in the market on your subsequent slide, and I thought that was very interesting. I was just wondering if you guys actually went
Right.
through that math.
So
Yeah.
this isn't the one you're talking about, though.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yes. And
Yeah, so to finish that, and then we'll get to your question, Councilmember Strader. So again, in these particular years, yeah, we had some anticipated losses, some anticipated costs. One factor to remember that's not listed here is our employee base increases as well. So again, you've got more people to be covering, and again, then your reserve has to grow with that as too, because again, it's 3 months of claim, or 3 months of paid premiums, so that you're increasing that as well. This one you talked about?
Mhm.
Okay. So, okay, so maybe, I'm not sure, hopefully, Councilmember Schroeder, this answers your question, but we tried to look at that on a year-by-year basis and see what the averages were in other places. So again, back to my other question, whereas would we have been better if we just stayed where we were? And the answer was generally no. I mean, generally there was some realized savings or some ability to do that. Again, one of the things we're seeing this year, of course, is a bigger jump of almost 18%. Potentially it may be slightly smaller, but it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark. When I talked to our CFO, he said, again, I'm not super concerned. We had a 0 last year. You're going to probably anticipate a higher increase the second year when you have a 0. So his view was again, from his standpoint, from the finance side, he looks at it over a much bigger scale and a much bigger period. Says over time, again, I think we're still pretty consistent. And I think he used 8% as an annual increase that was an average to him. So anything below the 8% to him was about a plus, and anything above 8%, depending how far above, was probably not a significant. And here we're kind of in that same ballpark. So he wasn't as concerned, but I think here we're trying to at least capture some intent that we're trying to stay really within the market or better if we can. So we can provide a better value from a service standpoint to our employees and a cost to the city that is relatively in the same ballpark as what we would have paid anyway, or better, then we think that's probably a plus.
Council President.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just go back to that slide, and I was going to compliment the team, actually, it's a fantastic slide deck. I thought it was really very helpful. But like, so if I, if I assumed that the base was constant from year to year, which I think is an unfair assumption, because to your point, the number of employees has gone up. So I can't really factor that math in, but if I just look at this, like, to me, it looks like it's neutral. Like, that's kind of where I'm coming out. Like, if we took the losses that we've incurred and the gains we've incurred into account, it looks to me like maybe we're slightly positive. If we accounted for these increases compared to the statewide average, it looks like it's pretty neutral. I mean, do you feel like that's, I think to calculate that, you'd need to, put an Excel spreadsheet together, or probably have the finance team help. But I mean, is that kind of the conclusion that you all are coming to, is that you feel like this is net neutral, or how do you kind of look at it? I just mean performance to date. I understand over a very long time period, that's where we should see a lot of the benefit, but yeah.
Yeah, the monetary is net neutral. You're
Yeah.
100% right.
Okay.
What we're gaining is the ability and the flexibility we have in the plan design.
Mhm.
So we are more marketable than we have ever been, because we've been able to add the smart shopper, the coupon maximizer, the telehealth, and all of those other things that we weren't able to add while we were fully insured. So those are where we have the most gain. So monetarily, yeah, we're net neutral, and we've been able to, kind of a net loss or net neutral in that respect. But what we're gaining is the flexibility in the market, to be able to be market competitive, attract and retain. with our benefit package. And that's really what we were trying to do with this self-funding. Over the long haul, what we're trying to do is to fund this to be able to do some post-retirement health or an HRA VIBA or something like that. But you have to do this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like City of Caldwell or City of Boise, in order to get that where you need it to be to sustain that for a long period of time in order to get to that point.
Maybe just one more question. Like, what level of plan assets do you feel that you would need to achieve in order for a program like that to be fundable? I was just curious, like, obviously we're taking the premiums, right? We're controlling that. I have to assume over a long time period, those assets build up. And then you reach a critical mass where it's been long enough and you kind of have a surplus and you can do some interesting things. But like what level of plan assets do you have to hit, or how long do you think that takes? I'm just curious. Obviously a long time frame from your perspective, but is there like a dollar figure that we're trying to achieve? Is there kind of like a specific goal?
I think honestly, we're looking for a period of time where we're in the green and we are not making significant plan design changes, so we are sustainable. We're looking for a period of time where we're sustainable. If you're looking at these slides, we're kind of doing this up and down yo-yoing. We're looking for that sustained period of time, and that I think is the tipping point where we can go, okay, now we can do something else, something more drastic, and we can fund, something post-retirement or something larger than what we can right now. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
President,
Councilor Willock.
just a quick
Christina?
question. Are there caps or limitations by the Department of Insurance? You have to have a minimum 3 months on your reserve side, but are you capped or limited on what you're able to put toward a surplus or build for future needs?
There is a cap, but it isn't clearly defined, and they won't give you a number. So they will review our quarterly statements, and they'll tell us when we're approaching said cap, but they won't tell us what that number is. So I can answer partially because I don't know entirely what that is.
Christina? What has been the benefit satisfaction with our employees since doing this? Is that improved? Is that increased? Recognizing that a lot of people don't always take the time to understand the different benefits that are included and the ways to take advantage of them. But I think that was one of the reasons why we did this, is to make ourselves more recruitable and to better meet the needs of our employees. Are they seeing that as well?
So the only way that I can answer that is through our exit interviews. I can say through our exit interviews, benefits is not something that's coming up as frequently in our exit interviews as being a point of someone leaving. We are scheduled to do our benefit survey this year. So we can do a comparison from this year to our previous one and see if there has been a difference. And I can report on that when we get the results.
Thank you.
I can add to your question, Council President Kavner. I mean, from an employee satisfaction, I mean, certainly, as I mentioned, we've had a few occasions where employee groups or individuals have come to the trust to say, this isn't working for me for whatever reason. Is there a way to help with that? I'm pretty confident all of those people would say, yes, having this trust was a lot better than me dealing with Blue Cross. That's not a whole lot of people, but there's certainly a minimal value to that. I think the other thing, and we talked about this a lot at the most recent benefits meeting as well as the trust meeting, is we spend a lot of effort, and HR has been fantastic in trying to educate our employees on what do you have and how it could be valuable to you. And the hardest part to educate folks is people don't care until they have to care. And then they care a lot. And then they really do see it and get it, that there is some things here that be of value to them. But you can tell people all day to go get your blood pressure checked. Till you have high blood pressure, you don't worry about it too much, and then you do. So I think the information is still valuable. It's still getting there. I think we're discussing a lot of times at the trust level, how do we make a better inroad? One of the things, for example, we discussed at our recent meeting is one of the higher groups of our high expense claims is dependents. So how do we make sure that our information that we give to employees is getting to their dependents? Because if the dependents are the ones where the claims are arising, is it from a lack of information or something else? And if it's lack of information, we can at least address that and hopefully get them more information to maybe get in front of those health conditions. The other one then, and I know, Councilmember Kavanaugh, you've heard me say this many times. One of the things that's out there, and I think Councilmember Whitlock gets this too, that we have zero control over is the cost of pharmaceuticals. And the cost of pharmaceuticals is incredibly expensive. And we as a group, as a trust, as well as the benefits committee, are trying to figure out ways to address those things as best we can, because we can't control what many of those things that you see. I was jokingly say between Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, every ad commercial you watch, all of those drugs are expensive. And every one of them, we've got to find ways to help address it because they are addressing health conditions that many of our employees are experiencing. And so how do we get to that? Well, we actually are looking at that, and we've actually got one on here that I think, and I don't know if it's on this slide. But we had this discussion recently with Blue Cross, and we do have a drug that is very expensive. It's only used by a few employees, but it can be real expensive. And there is a way to get to a better opportunity. And I know I saw the slide for it. Anyway, we did agree with Blue Cross to be able to pivot to essentially a biosimilar type of pharmaceutical for it. And they actually allowed us to move it up. Originally, when we agreed to it at our recent trust meeting, they said the earliest they could do was October. Actually signed off yesterday or the day before to move it to July so that we can get it up and going sooner. Again, it may only be a few people, but a few people for a very expensive pharmaceutical is a little bit more that's going to help. So I think we're always trying to do that. The other thing that I've said to a lot of folks that we cannot, you cannot anticipate things that may or may not have a great deal of preventative means to them. Certain types of cancers are really tough from a preventative means to be in front of. Education is the best we can do for many of those. Trying to get people in for early diagnosis for a lot of those things is the best we can do. We try to, but I can't anticipate this year there'll be 4, next year there'll be 6, but instead there's 8. Really hard for us to gauge all of that. So obviously we're trying to stay as much nimble on that as we can. Again, a lot of these things are where the costs are really realized and where we're getting those are the things that we're trying to address as a trust. Again, education is probably our biggest asset we can provide to our employees to do that. Other questions from anybody?
Mr. President.
Councilor Roberts.
Mr. President, Bill, thank you very much. There was a lot of things in there that clarified for me, so I appreciate that. So if someone gets to the point that they need an appeal, does the appeal go at this point to Blue Cross or does it come to the trust board?
I think it depends, and I'll let our folks from HR answer that too to help me with that. I think it depends on what it is.
Hi, Council.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm not 7 foot tall. So typically the first appeal does go through Blue Cross. I am usually informed by that point, helping the employee go through that process so that they have the ability to share their concerns with me. Then I have the ability to share them with the board as well. So we're kind of all at an angle. That way, if if the appeal goes to Blue Cross and it's denied for the first one, they can do up to 3. We do have the ability then to say that we need to exceed and go outside of Blue Cross and get a third-party appeal. That has happened in one instance for one of our employees that we have requested that to happen before the third even was formulated by Blue Cross to speed up the process. So there's a little bit of control that we do have at the city level for me. But then the board does approve that to move forward, and that moves through the appeal process with Blue Cross a little bit faster.
Thank you. Follow up? I won't say, you probably know which one I'm thinking about, but it just seemed like it was a fairly urgent matter, but it was seemed like it was very drawn out. How long does an appeal typically take?
I know Dan is here too from Blue Cross, but it can take a very long time. I will say I don't have a time frame that I know of. In this instance where we may be talking about a similar, it took probably 2.5 weeks to get the denial, and then they moved to an appeal, 2.5 weeks. To the next appeal, but then when we got involved, it was moved to third party, and third party had a decision within days.
Great, thank you.
Is that a City of Meridian process then that slows that? It's just, again, maybe the mechanics of.
Yeah, so Blue Cross does, depending on the claim, they have to go through and look at what our policies state. Now, if it's uncovered, what they need to do, that is all played by Blue Cross. And then they may work with a provider, which does take longer time because then they need to figure out, the word of medical necessity is used a lot. So they might work with the provider to find the medical necessity of the procedure or whatever they need to do. So that it all takes communication time back and forth where the provider's just not sitting in his office waiting for a phone call on this appeal. So it is lengthy. What we're here to try to do, and I advocate for our employees, is come to me with those concerns when you have them. Don't wait until you get that second appeal, because we can intervene and we can try to speed up the process as quickly as possible.
Those timelines, something that can be expedited as part of our agreement with working with them to basically say, hey, these things are important. And for, again, if it's the person I'm thinking of, that's a very, very big deal for that extended time. I recognize mechanics of an operation, but if we can say as an organization, we need a faster timeline, that's something I think that I would want to consider supporting if it's doable. So I do have one more question just about our employees meeting with the trust. So I recognize these meetings occur kind of during the work day. I know the mayor's not here, maybe Dave can chime in, but from an operational standpoint, if I'm an employee and I work for the Parks Department and I need to go to the trust meeting to present, hey, I need help with this particular thing. Does the employee have to use their time off to go attend? They just have to work with their supervisor to be excused? How do we handle it for, some of our police officers who maybe, they work graveyard or swing shift, and so that's putting them out of sequence? How are we providing that from an operational standpoint for employees?
That's a great question, Councilman Kerr. I don't know. The few we've had, that hasn't come up to us, to the trust, as I'd like to come and talk to you, but I can't, or I can't take the time, or where. I certainly would work with the departments if we need to make sure the employee has the opportunity or time to do it. Obviously, we wouldn't do anything much different if they had to go to Blue Cross to deal with it. Again, they're all online, so they can do with this on Zoom. They don't have to come physically to City Hall to do this. So we do provide that, but certainly if that were to come up, we would work with the department to make sure they could.
Thank you.
I can't answer one other question on your employee satisfaction. One of the things that we still get questioned about is post-employment health. That's always a question, has been for many years. And that was one of the objectives we were sought as why we would do this when we started this 6 years ago. And we did tell the employees that that's the goal. And that's the same answer I give them today. That is the goal. It's also on the compensation committee's radar. They also are looking at that, and they know that is from a both recruitment and retention standpoint, that is an important piece. So I've reminded employees, again, all of these things take time. It's not off the checklist. It's just one of the things we're trying to get to, but making sure we have a viable, usable, helpful program at a reasonable cost for the employees in the city is our number one goal. And that's what we're trying to do. But, I can't repeat enough how valuable the working relationship we've had with Blue Cross and with Gallagher has been to make this successful. Because of them and because of the work that's being done with HR and our trustees, I think we have a successful program, and it's just hopefully going to continue going forward.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Taylor.
Bill, quick question. Excuse me. Of the many reasons why we chose this route, it seemed as if one of them was to provide some consistent stability over time with increases, sort of absorb the increases or losses to sort of have a kind of a flatter, more predictable trajectory. Seems like this year that's wildly out of line. Do we, and I missed the all employee meeting for various reasons, but do we understand why we were at 0% and now we're looking at 18%? And I understand the rationale, like we didn't see any increases last year, but seems like that's a big departure from one of the goals here is to have that stability over time. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, maybe a little bit. I mean, again, we do have to look at it on a year-by-year basis, right? And so, you know, ideally, from a business standpoint, I think what you're saying would be the one way to do it, right? You could say, look, every year we're just going to do an 8% increase, like the Todd projects. So we'll charge 8% no matter what the cost of the program is. But last year, based on the cost of the program, based on what the actuaries believed, we couldn't justify that to the city or to the employees to charge a greater premium than what the cost would be. So we didn't do that. So from a business standpoint, although maybe it would have been wiser to have said, we'll just charge 8% and bank that difference, in anticipating of it being more, that really isn't how we function or how it works, and how the Department of Insurance, in my opinion, would probably not allow us to do that. They would be concerned about that. But that's kind of the challenge we always have, is you're trying to gauge your experience going forward, what it could be or can't be, what it would cost, and that's kind of where those numbers all line up to. So I don't have a better answer than that, and certainly if either Gallagher or Blue Cross have a better answer, I'm happy to have them come up. But I don't know that there is a better way to do it that we could build that consistency, other than for the program to realize those savings, be able to use that, and then whether or not we reapply some of those savings, because that's what some of these programs do, is as they build up a surplus, they may say, hey, we'll have a 17% increase, but we'll buy back 2% of it or 3% of it and only realize a 14% increase or something less, because we can use some of that reserve money for that.
Bill, to that point, I would, not tonight certainly, but I think asking some of our industry leaders recommendations on things that we can do. I think we all are well aware of our budget challenge that we're going to be working through this year, and consistency, right? Predictability makes, when it's already challenging, a little bit more easier to digest when you have these inconsistent numbers. We're already kind of working every angle we can to take care of our employees and also maintain our business operations. Being able to have some more predictability would be helpful. Okay.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
just one question, missing piece I see on the graph. We have a comparison on the average statewide versus what we've seen in the trust on increases. And we have the really high increase that we're predicting that we're going to see in 2026, but I don't see a prediction of what the statewide increase. Are they looking at about the same? More, less? So we can have some sort of context on what that 2026 increase is going to look like?
This is Cindy Teely. We have people who are watching online that want to hear your wisdom, and so they cannot hear you, unfortunately, from the audience. So
Again, this is Cindy Teely from Gallagher.
Council. So, excuse me if I'm nervous, because I always am. One of the things that we find is that with your larger self-funded groups, a lot of times their experience is what drives cost. And so one of the things that we've seen with the beginning of your immature trust is that you've had two perfect storms. One Bill talked about, and that was a pandemic. And the second one is inflation, and we've all been hit with that. And so consequently, we're seeing across the board where some of the larger self-funded MIWAS, for instance, the statewide school, they're looking at a 7% rate increase. So we're seeing other large self-funded accounts, again, they're in the same type situation. The difference is you don't have the additional built-up surplus as that they have, whereas I have conversations with some of my self-funded accounts is, well, we're going to take X number of dollars out of our surplus because we don't want the employees to have a rate increase. It's just your plan is immature, but we're seeing across the board statewide, we're seeing the rate increase come across, and a lot of it is inflation. And I think that from your perspective, if you look at the cost of hiring your employees, you look at the cost of materials, everything is costing more. I know that from our perspective, from consultants, we look at it at every lever, every opportunity that we can find to save the trust dollars, but we also don't want to take it out on the back of the employees.
Yep.
So there has to be an even balance to be able to do that.
Thank you. Bill, maybe to that last point. And like the mayor's not here, and I'm asking you to maybe do something that we don't like to do, which is ask you to maybe speak for the mayor. But when he says at the employee meeting that we should be expecting a 17 to 18% increase, what does that mean? And what does that mean to our employees? What message should they be taking away from when they hear that?
Well, that's a great question, Councilman Cavanagh. And here's what I always tell employees. You have to look at the scale, right? So if you take and look at how much, one of the things that is not planned to change is employees don't pay anything for their health care. So whatever the percentage increase is, that won't affect you. If you're the only person covered under your plan right now, there is no intention to make any change to that. So it won't mean anything to you. But if you have dependent care, like I do, you have dependents on your plan, you do pay a portion, right? We pay 20%. So all the employees are paying 20% of their cost of their dependent. 17%, if you were to take a very quick lawyer math is what I usually use, and say, what's 17% of that number? How much is that going to realize on you? Because what I would normally get for a lot of employees is say, we got a 2% increase on my wages, but a 10% increase on my benefits. I lost money. Well, 10% on this pool is a lot smaller than the 2% on your wages. So the reality is 17% potentially could be a significant number related to your dependent costs and care expenses, but the number is a much smaller number you're starting with than what you may realize in a cost of living adjustment that you might get. So is it going to net out different? Again, everybody's pay is different. That likely it will cost you a little more for your benefits compared to what we might provide you in a cost of living. You're probably still going to be in ahead.
Bill, I know you said every 3 years the trust's audited, so you guys have been around for 6. Have you been audited once, twice? What is
Get audited every year.
Every year?
Every year.
Okay, I thought the slide said 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Council, any other questions? Bill, team, especially our friends from Gallagher and Blue Cross being here. Bill touched on that about being partnership and having you guys here for the conversation too. Echoes that, so thank you for that. This was very informative for me, Bill, and I
Good.
appreciate it. I do think though that given these cost increases, I do think it is important that we go out and look at an RFP for our health insurance. So I don't know what that process looks like. What would be good is if you and the team could discuss that and come back to us with maybe what a calendar of that would look like, and if that's something we'd be able to execute before we approve next year's budget, or if that has to come at a later point in time. I just think that cost is going to be a big factor of our budget, and so I don't think we've been out for RFP in a long time, and so I think now is a good time for us to take a look at that, taking in some of these efficiencies that we've learned in the past 5 years with our trust, and looking for your leadership to where we need to take it.
We can do that.
Great, thank you. Council, anything else? If not, that brings us to the end of our agenda for our work session.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Been moved and
Seconded?
seconded by Councilmember Little Roberts, and we are adjourned from the work session. regular meeting of the City Council to order. It is April 22nd, 6:00 PM. We will begin tonight's meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Here.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilman Whitlock.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader.
All ayes. Will now join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is the community invocation. I'd like to invite Vinnie Hankey up for tonight's prayer. You join us in prayer or take this as a moment of silence and reflection. Vinnie?
Councilman Cavanagh, council members, thanks for the opportunity to come and lead in prayer tonight. God, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for the changing of the seasons and the testimony to your faithfulness to us in that. As we approach the spring and summertime, God, I pray for the citizens of Meridian, that they would enjoy the city that you've given to us, that we might be full of kindness and love for our neighbors, and in that spirit, we would bring you glory. I pray for the city council as they discern their business tonight. Would you grant them wisdom, leadership, character, and integrity? And we ask all these things in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Vinnie. Appreciate you being here. All right, council, I'm going to go down to the podium. We've got a couple of proclamations tonight. Oh, we do got to adopt the agenda, don't we? Yes, let's take care of the official business. Councilmember Strader.
Thank you, Council President Cavanagh. I move that we adopt the agenda as published.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All ayes. Now, we'll get to the proclamation. So don't adjust your cameras. The mayor is absent tonight, and so he's asked me to fill in for him. We have two proclamations tonight that I'm really, really excited about. I'll do the first one for the Hawaii High School Girls Basketball Championship Day. I'll invite you guys up after the proclamation, say any words, take a picture, and then we'll also do one for Idaho Gives. So, whereas being a Hawaii basketball player is more than scoring points, making assists, grabbing rebounds, stealing the ball, and achieving back-to-back state titles, it is training to build leadership, character, confidence, teamwork, and resilience. All traits need to succeed on the court, in the classroom, and in the real world. And whereas getting stronger and stronger each year, the team turned 4 years of trials, adversity, and hard-earned lessons into the first title in the young program's history. And whereas Owyhee finished with a 25-2 overall record, an 11-0 record in the Southern Idaho Conference with their hard work, skills, and teamwork, recapturing in a 38-33 victory in the 2025 State Basketball Championship Tournament to capture their first state title for 6A girls basketball team. And whereas the leadership, training, discipline of their coaches helped all team members to focus their talents and passion, becoming a winning team, with each player making valuable contributions to their victory. Therefore, I, Luke Kavanagh, on behalf of Robert E. Simpson, hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2025 as Owyhee High School Girls Basketball State Championship Day in the city of Meridian. Sorry, Mayor Chadwick, and call upon the community to join us in congratulating the Storm on their remarkable athletic achievement for representing Meridian so proudly in the state tournament. This is signed by our mayor, and I'd like to invite the team, if you want to come up, you're welcome to introduce yourself, the position you played, and what year you are in school.
Hi, my name's Maya Hardy. I'm a senior at Hawaii High School and I play post.
Hi, I'm Riley Beck. I'm a senior at Hawaii High School and I play forward/post.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Hamilton. I'm a freshman and I play point guard.
Hi, my name's Audrey McKenna. I'm a junior and I'm a shooting guard.
George Rodriguez, and I am the head coach of the Hawaii girls basketball.
Congratulations. Thank you. Chris, you want to take a picture? You guys want to stand here on the podium? And certainly you are welcome to, but as state champions, you do not have to stay for the rest of the meeting. So especially appreciate our seniors being here tonight as the year's getting ready to wind up. Okay, one additional proclamation. This is for Idaho Gives Week. Whereas nonprofit organizations help build and sustain healthy communities in our state and enhance the quality of life for Idahoans and for others throughout the country and the world. And whereas over 7,000 charitable nonprofit organizations based in Idaho contribute significantly to our economy by providing services to our communities, employing over 79,000 Idahoans and producing total revenue of over 10.3 billion. And whereas nonprofit organizations often fulfill their missions by advocating on behalf of those who cannot advocate for themselves. And whereas Idaho's nonprofit leaders are often entrepreneurs who create new solutions to problems and fill previously unmet needs in the areas of health, recreation, education, research, art, social services, and more. And whereas Idaho Gives Week serves as a time for Idahoans to join together with one voice on one day to contribute and to amplify the efforts of all Idaho nonprofits. Therefore, I, Luke Kavanagh, on behalf of Robert E. Simison, do hereby proclaim April 28th through May 1st, 2025 as Idaho Gives Week in the city of Meridian, and encourage all citizens, residents to contribute to recognize and support the many nonprofit organizations that help our community. Signed April 22nd, 2025, our mayor, Robert E. Simison. Is there somebody from Idaho Gives here? Awesome, I thought so. I just will say, we've got a couple council members that work in nonprofit. I work in nonprofit. My wife works in nonprofit. Appreciate so much what this event means, not just for those nonprofits, but for so many in our state. So Kevin, proclamation for you.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say?
This is the 13th year of Idaho Gives that we've been running it at Idaho Nonprofit Center. So I've been lucky enough to lead the work at the Idaho Nonprofit Center for the last 4 years, and I've been in the nonprofit sector my whole career. And this year we'll cross the $30 million raised in the history of that program. About 620 nonprofits will participate this year. We'll hope to cross the $4 million mark raised as we did last year for the first time in a single campaign year. It's really about the nonprofits that participate. I brought with me Grant Jones here in the first row, the CEO of Metro Meals on Wheels, and nonprofits really do fill all of the gaps and help provide those things that help our communities thrive. And it's because of folks like Grant and his team of staff and volunteers that get meals to our seniors and folks in rural areas. And then I think of places like the Children's Museum just down the street and the opportunities that those kind of enrichment activities provide for our community and help us build those thriving communities where everyone can really experience all that Idaho has to offer. So thanks again, and support your favorite causes on April 28th through May 1st. Yeah, let's do it. Grant, come on up.
Madam Vice President, since you're at the podium. I would just like to say a huge thank you to Idaho Gives. I had the pleasure of being on the board when we started. The first time it was brought before us, we were terrified. We didn't even do it the first year. And then the second year we went ahead and we hoped someday it would make $1 million a year. Grant went through all of this with us. And so it has exploded above and beyond our wildest dreams. So thank you for continuing to carry the torch and turning it into something that we could never even imagine.
You're here. Let's give a round of applause. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you, council, and Councilmember Little Roberts for your comments. I too remember when this got started and how it was so ambitious to even think that they could do 1 million, and just to see them continue to exceed. So, council, now we'll move on to public forum. Mr. Clerk, has anybody signed up in advance?
Mr. President, nobody has signed up.
Nobody signed up. So now we'll move to action items. First up is item number 3, a public hearing for proposed updates to Meridian City Code Title V with Meridian Parks and Recreation Code. Turn this over to Mr. Neri. Sit away.
No, I got it. There. Governor, members of the council, so what you have on your agenda is a public hearing for the code that was brought before you by Ms. Kane from my team a couple of weeks ago. This is the opportunity for public input. There are 2 changes or 2 clarifications that need to be made. One was there was a question that had come up about climbing trees in the city parks. So after a discussion between Ms. Kane and Mr. Sitaway, it was determined that we don't need that provision in the code. It already isn't, just for clarification, it already exists in the city code. I don't know that anyone's ever been cited for climbing a tree in the city park unless they break it. That's the whole purpose of it, is simply to make sure people don't damage our trees. But we recognize the concern that was raised, and Mr. Sitaway said it was fine. We could take that out. The other one was, there had been some previous discussion about amplification devices in the park and for music and other speakers and things. Historically, it's been that you needed a permit, so it was only using of that type of devices when you had a permit to use one of our shelters. But we also recognize people use those type of devices other than that. So this does allow it. There are some decibel limitations to it as well. So they aren't always required by permit now, but you can have them differently, applied differently, used differently if you have a permit. So there's certainly some ways to address it from a permitting standpoint, but otherwise it really was to address some other needs that exist. So that was really the only clarifications that Ms. Kane put in the memo. And again, if Steve or Garrett have something else you have a question about, they could probably be more specific.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Neri. Council, any questions for staff? Okay. This is a public hearing. Mr. Johnson, did anybody sign up in advance to provide testimony on any of these code changes?
Council President, nobody signed up.
Right, nobody signed up. Is there anybody in the room or online who would like to provide testimony? If so, please make your way up to the podium or use your raise your hand feature. Not seeing anyone raising their hand or coming up front. So council, what would you like to do? What would you like your preferred action to be?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
seeing as there's no more further comment, I'd move that we close the public hearing.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all ayes, and the motion passes. Moving on then is item number 4, our public hearing for Center Point Apartments, application H-2025-0009. We'll turn this over to Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Council President Kavanaugh, members of the council. This one tonight is a request that's being requested by the applicant. They may have a representative here. I did speak with Ms. Ritter, the planner on this project, and basically what's the Idaho Transportation Department has asked for additional considerations and some right-of-way and some other things in regards to this project. They've had that discussion with our staff. They're still having this ongoing discussion with the applicant. The applicant asked for a little more time so they could work further with ITD on these concessions and see if they could find a way to make that work and what they're seeking. So they were seeking this request, but partly pretty much driven by some of the requests by ITD. Again, they may have a representative here, but if not, that's the reason.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Neri. Is there anyone here representing the applicant that would like to provide any additional testimony? Not seeing any. Mr. Johnson, I have a note here that the applicant is asking for May the 6th to be continued. What does our agenda look like that evening?
Mr. President, I'll have to look that up one moment.
Johnson, didn't mean to put you on the spot like that for you earlier. Just so good at anticipating all my questions.
Mr. Council President, there are 3 public hearings that evening. Can't speak to the length of them, but there are 3 scheduled.
If I recall, Mr. Johnson, the following week is a little bit lighter.
Mr. President, this time we've noticed nothing for May 13th.
Council, we haven't had long late city council meetings in a long time, but yes, we can add this to the 6th with 3 other public hearings or the 13th with none. What's your purview?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Taylor.
would the applicant like to weigh in? Does it matter if it's the May 6th or May 13th?
Oh, it looks like the applicant is raising their hand. So, Mr. Johnson, now that they've raised their hand, if you want to admit them and allow the applicant to provide some testimony.
Good evening, council. Appreciate your consideration of the continuance. Either date is fine by me.
Great. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Taylor.
I'd move that we continue the public hearing on the Center Point Apartments H-2025-00009 to May 13th.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of continuing the public hearing to May the 13th, say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion passes. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and we'll see you on the 13th. Up next is item number 5, a public hearing for jump time, H-2025-0011. We'll turn this item over to staff for comments. Nick.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the council. Next item on the agenda is the development agreement modification for jump time. The applicant requests a modification to the existing development agreement to modify provisions number 6 to remove minor vehicle repair from the prohibited uses and replace the old concept plan with a new one. The site consists of 3.57 acres of land, zone CC, located at 2805 East Franklin Road. As shown on the screen, the existing zoning is CC and the flume designation is commercial. The property was annexed with the CC zoning in 2009, consisting of 3.57 acres with 2 building lots. The subject property then went through a development agreement modification to replace the existing DA in 2016 as a part of the jump time approval. The concept plan accompanying the DA modification showed 4 buildings with a central access to Franklin Road. However, since that annexation, the access was required to shift to the western property boundary. Be on the top of the screen here. It looks more north, but is the west property boundary, which affected the concept plan. Due to the original concept plan, city staff had restricted certain uses, as having children walking through the parking lot with a central access point was a point of concern at the time. Since the access has shifted and cross access to the property to the east, which is on the bottom of the screen right here, there's cross access there now. Staff is in support of amending the development agreement to allow for minor vehicle repair. This use will be rather isolated from the front entrance to jump time, and staff is recommending signage to watch for pedestrians. Additionally, minor vehicle repair is an otherwise permitted use in the CC zone. The property is governed by the current DA, do not meet the city's landscaping requirements as it currently sits. And as a part of this development agreement modification, staff is requiring the existing parking lot landscaping and landscape buffers to be brought into conformity with the UDC. Staff discussed this with the applicant during the pre-application meeting and through the application process, and no concerns were expressed by the applicant. Staff is recommending approval and has not received any written testimony at this time, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Nick. Council, any questions for staff? Seeing any? Is the applicant here? Good evening. Welcome to the Meridian City Council. You could just state your name and address for the record, and sir, the time is yours.
Yep. Thanks for having us tonight. Eric Anderson, 1506 West Dewey Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to present these modifications to the DA. It's nice to get another user interested on the site and fill this property up. We've worked with staff and had numerous conversations about the connectivity and expanding the connection to the east and west. And we're happy to see the eastern property finally be paved and curb and gutter go in so we can actually utilize that cross access. So at this point, meeting with the owner of Jump Time and then the new applicant or the new property owner of this pad site, Pad B, we feel confident that the safety of the children and then people going through, I think we will address that through signage, and we don't have any concerns any longer. So we agree with staff recommendations to approve, and we have no concerns about or we agree with all the conditions of approval at this time. I stand for any questions.
Council, any questions?
Council President.
Council Administrator.
Hello, my kids are big Jump Time fans. Just wanted to check, it looks like you will have an additional entrance then that is opened up, and will that be primarily used for the vehicle repair?
Yes, I would expect most, if you look at the new site plan, site down at the bottom of the page, I see a lot of the vehicles will want to come in there. It's quicker access to the vehicle repair. And then, you see these, quick turnaround vehicle, oil change type places. You don't get a ton of traffic. I mean, you're talking 30, 40 cars maybe a day. We're not talking 100 a minute. I mean, and a lot of the children you'll see, if you've been to Jump Time in the open parking lot that's currently built, a lot of the parking that people park there. So, we've got it sectioned off, a new landscape buffer between the Jump Time parking and this Pad B site. I think that's going to buffer a lot of the traffic as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying so. I appreciate the thought about the signage and so forth. I mean, certainly on the weekends, it's a very busy parking lot already. You're opening up more parking for this additional pad site, but I think you have the right idea with the landscaping buffer. What will that look like, the landscaping buffer that you just referenced?
I mean, well, it's a 7-foot wide landscape buffer as required by ordinance, and it will tie it into the rest of the site. We'll have all landscaping match.
So maybe one more question, just thank you, Council President. So it looks like just based on the circulation, so will there be cross access from the westernmost part of the new pad to the rest of the parking lot, or is that where the landscaping buffer is going to?
No, so you'll be able to come through the western entrance and come through that parking and come straight in to the service area with we'll have enough stacking for 3 cars wide by 3 to 4 deep. So there won't be any stacking. We don't expect any stacking in the parking area. The other way that cars can come through, they'll loop around and come straight in as well. So if they come through the western property, there's less interaction with the Jump Time clients.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Council, any other? Great. Thank you, sir. No other questions at this time.
Very good. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Mr. Johnson, did anyone sign up in advance to provide testimony on this application?
Mr. President, nobody has signed up.
Okay, is there anybody in the room who'd like to provide testimony or online? If you're online, please use the raise your hand feature, or if you're in the room, please make your way up to the podium at this time. Not seeing anybody moving forward. Council, what's your action?
Council President.
Councilmember Overton. Oh, yes, Mr. Overton, before I call for a motion, I did want to at least give the applicant one last opportunity if they had any closing remarks. You don't have to. You're welcome to waive your closing remarks if you'd like. Like the applicant's waiving his closing remarks. That tip to Councilmember Whitlock for the flag. Thank you, sir. Now, Councilmember Overton, I believe you had a motion.
Before a motion,
Fair enough.
comment. This going in with the additional signage, I have to agree with Council Vice President Strader that even if this wasn't going in, the additional signage is probably a very good thing to add to that parking lot due to the tremendous amount of traffic Jump Time gets already. So having this go in and provide as few vehicles a day as it does, the big bonus here, I think, is the extra safety we hope to see with the signage included. I don't see this being a negative impact to this location at all. I would certainly support it and be ready for a motion if there's no other comments.
Council, I'll be brief. I look at this one a little bit differently. I do not see an oil change facility as a compatible use with a very high young pedestrian user. I have not a lot of concerns about the drivers who will be accessing the oil change. It's more, Councilmember Strader's comments, this parking lot can be a little chaotic, even on a Tuesday, let alone on a Saturday. And for me, it's one of those that if I was a citizen, I would be driving past and say, I don't know if there was a lot of thought and planning put into that one. So I understand, appreciate what the applicant's trying to do. I just do not think it's a compatible use with a facility that has a lot of young pedestrians that are going to be moving of their own free will.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
there's no further comments. I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion seconded to close the public comments. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair is an aye and motion passes. The public hearing is now closed.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
there's no more comments. Take a shot at this first motion. After considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2025-0011.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Clerk, call roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cavanagh.
No.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Five ayes, 1 no, and the application is agreed to. Thank you all for being here. That concludes our action items. We'll move on now to ordinances. Item number 6. We'll have this ordinance introduced by our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you want the ordinance read or do you want an introduction?
Just read in by title.
Thank you. It's an ordinance amending Meridian City Code Section 332B12 regarding collection of fingerprints for criminal background check of applicants for vehicle immobilization licenses, amending Meridian City Code Section 342A5A5 regarding collection of fingerprints for criminal background checks for applicants for mobile sales unit licenses, amending Meridian City Code Section 352B5 regarding collection of fingerprints for criminal background check of applicants for pawnbroker licenses, amending Meridian City Code Section 393B2 regarding collection of fingerprints for criminal background check of applicants for precious metal dealer licenses, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Heard this read by title. Does anyone want it read in full? Seeing one in here. Council, just real quick, Mr. Johnson brought this. This is allowing our clerk staff to help assist by taking fingerprints here in the building once we get our new software and equipment. So they were bringing this preparation of that. For an action,
Mr. President,
Councilmember Taylor.
move that we approve ordinance number 25-2080.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Clerk, please call roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
That brings us to the end of our action items. Are there any future meeting topics? Council, I have a couple for you. A reminder, some of us are headed to Sun Valley this weekend, so travel safe. I do think that you received an email today asking about your dinner choice for that first evening. And then staying in the vein of food, excuse me, we have our council meeting that Tuesday night at Louis. So use the full menu, so you'll be able to come in and order what you want. You're welcome to bring your guests, and no business in that meeting, just good fellowship and conversation. And then if I could have a quick moment of privilege, council, this last weekend I did something that I never thought I would go do, which I went and saw WrestleMania with my 9-year-old son. Now, it did not go well because our hero, our champion, Cody Rhodes, was defeated by the dastardly John Cena. And it broke my son's heart. And like all parents, you want to do whatever you can to take care of our kids. And so I made a promise that I probably should have checked with you all first, but I didn't, so you'll have to indulge me, which is that I'm calling on Cody Rhodes to get a rematch against John Cena at the next pay-per-view on behalf of Lincoln Kavanagh. So Pork Chop, I know you're watching, and happy to follow through on that promise. So with that, I would now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Council President Cavanagh, move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.